So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our special delivery. This is our second. This is the second one that this series that we've done. So really quickly about the special delivery, it can be about any topic. So if you're passionate about something, or there's something that you like to share with others, or that you think needs to be more discussed, this is a platform to do it. And it's really important, especially in this environment, new COVID. So today, our stories of resiliency. I have Master Sergeant Jeremy Wilkins from the 811th FSS and retired Tech Sergeant DERICK Whitley, Air Force Wounded Warrior. I'll let them both give their introductions. Just a couple of reminders. Please update the fellow JITSer at the bottom so we can see your name. Thank you to anyone who's dialed in. This will be available on the NCR YouTube channel after this, but we'll start with Sergeant Wilkins.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Like I said, my name is Master Sergeant Jeremy Wilkins. I'm a flight chief with the 811 Security Forces Squadron at Joint Base Andrews.
So Sergeant Wilkins, you can go ahead and jump in if you like.
Okay. So just like with my story of resiliency. Okay, so the reason I'm speaking here today is my resiliency has been stretched and pushed past the limits since March of 2018. At that time, my wife was diagnosed with stage 2B breast cancer. A year and 2 days after that, she was re-diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And about 3 months later, on June 11th of 2019, our 9th wedding anniversary, she passed away to complications from the cancer. At the time, she was 33 years old. My daughter was 8, and I was the one who had to tell an 8-year-old that her mother was going to pass away. She wasn't going to come home. And through my 14 years in the Air Force, that is, if you take every hard and trying day that I had and put them all in the span of an hour, it wouldn't even touch how hard that was. When I was saying the words, I couldn't even believe that I was saying them. So from the minute that she was diagnosed with stage 2 until the current day, my leadership has taken amazing care of me. They gave me everything that I needed, time off, time to come to work to clear my head and not escape from home. But sometimes work can be, can take your mind off of other things. And between that and my family, my wife's family, she was from Southern Maryland, and they're all still here. I mean, I can take off driving in 15 minutes. I can be at anybody's house. They help picking up my daughter while I'm working a shift. I work kind of odd hours, but I felt it was something that you needed to talk about, because I've heard a story very similar when I was in ALS several years ago, and the way that he was able to deal with it, and the way that I've been able to deal with a really, really tough situation, because every day has a struggle, and it's not just a normal, ordinary day anymore. Every day is a whole lot different. But no, I felt it was appropriate to share my experience in hopes that I could connect with anybody who might be going through a tough time, and let them know that the resiliency, while it may be stretched and it may be strained, you can go a lot further than you really think you can. And you have to rely on your family, your friends, and including your work colleagues to get through it all.
So, Sergeant Wilkins, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think that one of the biggest things to remember about the challenges that we face is that they're all so individual. And what you're sharing with us today, a lot of us, you know, we do have people that we care about a lot and have experienced losses in different ways. Just two things that come to mind, and then I'll open it to the floor that I'm wondering. So you shared that everyone was really supportive. What does that look like, or how were they supportive to you?
So that looks like different. It's different. Every person's different from what I needed from a commander versus what I needed from a immediate supervisor, what I needed from family. Luckily I knew my commander during that time from a previous command. So we had a great professional working relationship, and for him on down, they would tell me like, hey, look, if she has an appointment, that's your place of duty. Don't worry about work. Work is fine. Work is work. The Air Force is going to go on. You need to be there to support your family. And that's not just this command. I've had several commanders all the way up to, I had a major general actually make the decision to send me home from a deployment to take care of my family that I may not have made on my own. Everybody calls and offers like, hey, what do you need? What do you need? But when you have somebody like me, they're not going to take the help almost. You basically have to be like, hey, you're going to stay home. So they were tough where they needed to be tough. And then when I decided to come back, and to be honest with you, that's as trying and as tough as helping my wife through chemo and radiation and ringing the bell, and her continuing to work and her hair growing back, and then getting the bombshell that, hey, the cancer's back, and then obviously the hospital stay, and then leading up to her passing. That was very tough. However, nothing in my training has ever prepared me to be a single dad. And all of a sudden it was me, because I was, let's be honest, I was a driver. My wife did everything. She scheduled things. She made sure that she told me what time. I was like, okay, cool. I can do that. So to all of a sudden to not have any of that, was huge. And I kind of, you find coping mechanisms, healthy coping mechanisms. Mine happens to be video games. And, I was staying up late, playing them, just trying to get my mind off of everything. My daughter's asleep there on the couch with me. And finally, one day it was just enough, that it was about a month after the funeral. I called. I was like, hey, look, I've got to come back, because if I keep going down this road, like I was slipping into, depression, drinking more than I probably should have. The final straw was I fell asleep looking at pictures on Amazon Photos. We had 33,000 photos that we had uploaded. And I woke up the next morning after falling asleep, looking at those, basically just crying my eyes out. I was like, okay, I got to go back to work. I got to have a sense of purpose. So roundabout back to the chain of command, they said, okay, are you sure? I said, yes, I've got to do this. And they put me in a job that was fairly low stress, fix some programs, take care of some people. And then I was transferred over to the 811th, where I am now. And they were the same way. They kind of treated me with kid gloves, and they were like, okay, well, we're going to put you here. You don't really have a whole lot of responsibility. And I felt myself kind of slipping back into that depressive state, because I didn't really have a purpose. I was sitting behind two phenomenal senior NCOs that already had a really tight hold on their sections. So I volunteered to go work a shift, got some eyebrows raised at me, like, are you sure? And I said, yep, absolutely. And I've been doing that since January, and it has been the best thing to get back to have a sense of purpose. To lead a flight, I lead 53 people, and they're awesome. And in relation to that, I don't get off until 9, 10 o'clock. So I have to have family members and not my family. I'm originally from Louisiana. But it's my wife's family members who they pick her up from daycare, feed her, do her homework with her. And it allows her to kind of heal with them. And it allows me to have my sense of purpose from what I signed up to be. And it works great for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree that it's different for everyone. And I think
Oh, yeah.
what the military, I always call it my military mind, but our military mind, I think we often struggle, right? Like, because we want to have that purpose, we want to meet the mission, we want to do those things. And we're taught to be strong and we're taught to be wingmen, but we always want to be the one calling someone and saying, how can I help, versus asking for help. And admittedly, when I was younger, I wasn't very good at asking for help, and I've gotten much better. So anyone messes around and says, "Sergeant Witter, how can I help you?" I'm like, welcome. This is how you can help me. But it took a really long time. And that's what I was going to ask you. And you kind of already answered it. But how difficult was it? And once you started receiving help, was it easier to ask, if that makes sense?
Parts of it, yes. Parts of it, no. I'm very much like, I can count on one hand how many days that I've missed work with, I almost broke my ankle when I was down at Tyndall, and I took one day off because I couldn't drive, couldn't put my boot on. The next day I was back at work, and I had my ankle propped up, had ice all over the place. But yeah, because that's me, what you just described. Like, I'm going to be the one taking care of other people. It was very hard because my wife was my soundboard. We were best friends. We talked about everything constantly, either text or call, and she understood what I was going through a lot. And if I had a bad day, I could talk to her about it. Well, at that point, I wasn't having bad days at work because I wasn't going to work. My bad days were, watching her in the passenger seat, on the way home from chemo, feel the, like, I can't imagine what that felt like. So it affected me. And I actually, about a month after her re-diagnosis with stage 4, I ended up in the emergency room because I thought I had a stomach ulcer because I wasn't talking to anybody. I had to drive myself because she couldn't drive at that point. So here I am thinking I'm dying, driving myself to the hospital, can't breathe, shoulders are hurting, think I'm having a heart attack. And at that point I was like, okay, I will go talk to someone. And I got hooked up with BHOP, and they were great initially. I kind of had to bounce around from a couple counselors. So I was kind of telling the story over and over again. I wasn't really gaining traction. And luckily enough, one of the counselors, I had a good working relationship again while I was down at Tyndall. I ran the confinement facility down there. I had to bring all the inmates to him for an initial evaluation. I saw him, knew he was there. I went and got appointments with him after my wife passed away. So it was more bereavement counseling. At first it was every week. And it was, okay, I think we can wait a week in between. And then it started like 3 weeks. And then it's been a couple months since I've been. And it was, we've been told, I've heard for the last 10 years, go to mental health, go to BHOP. It's not what you think. It's not what you think. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, okay. And it wasn't until I was like, okay, I literally put myself in the hospital because I wasn't sharing anything, because I didn't want to add any stress to her life, because it wasn't it was the cancer that was the stress in my life. So I didn't want to make her feel bad. So mental health, BHOP, they're excellent soundboards. They can just let you talk it out, no judging. And then, basically that first appointment, I was a little apprehensive. And then after that, I was like, okay, got it. So it initially, yes, it was very hard. But now it truly is one of the best resources that we have.
Thank you so much. I was a former mental health I was a technician for 10 years. So I always love it when I hear the good news. I joke that the bad news travels fast. And like you said, the stigma around mental health. And the way BHOP works, it sounds about right that you'd switch. But because we are military, sometimes that is part of the struggle. You know, you switch providers, you build a rapport. But I tell people it's like a relationship. If you go and you don't like that provider because you're just not getting that vibe, just go back, you know, try a different thing. So thank you for being so transparent and sharing all of that. At this time, before we move on to Sergeant Whitley, I'd like to open up the floor if anyone has any thoughts that they like to share or questions that they have. This is your opportunity.
Yes, I do. So I really want to say I appreciate you for telling your story. So one of my biggest questions for you, I know you talked about how you kind of worked through things. How did you help, or what resources did you use to one help you transition to being a single father, right? And then how did you cope with your daughter coping with the loss?
So that is still an everyday struggle. I joke all the time that, you know, I failed daily as a parent, but I learned something every day from those failures. I am very, very fortunate that about 4 months or so before her initial diagnosis, we were stationed back up here from Tyndall, and that was kind of in part due to the general that I was talking about. He sent me home from Afghanistan. It kind of got the ball rolling. I have absolutely no clue how I would have done this at any other duty station because her family was so close. And I mean, it's the entire family. It's aunts, uncles, grandparents, my brother and sister-in-laws could not have done this without them. And she's 9 now, and in a couple years, there's going to be some things that I don't know. So it's leaning on family, talking with other single parents. You know, how do you do this? How do you do that? And by the way, my daughter, yes, she is 9, but she is like a 30-year-old in spirit. She is my wife's mini me. I mean, talks like her, keeps me in check like her. So being open, honest, and transparent with her. There are still some times where I'm like, you're a kid. You don't need to know the answers to everything. But I talk with her. Hey, you know, how do you feel about this? What do you think we should do here? And it gives her an ownership. And it still kind of makes me look like I know what I'm doing. But no, just she's been involved with a couple counselors. She's heavily engaged with a counselor weekly at school, or was. Now it's kind of over video chats. She's been to a camp, a resiliency camp, and she's learning things just as much as I am, because every day brings some new challenge that we're not used to, you know, to being just the two of us. And it's one of those, like, I wish I had this black and white answer, like this is how I did it. But honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out. And I will be for the foreseeable future. Which, I mean, I think that's kind of all parents are still trying to figure it out. But it's boils down to my way was talking to her, using my family, and just being listening and not discounting her feelings about anything.
Thank you. And thank you, Sergeant King, for that question. Does anyone else have anything? And if you're not willing to ask the question, if you want to shoot me a message, I'm able to ask it for you. There'll be an opportunity again at the end. Whitley, are you still there? I saw you and I didn't see you anymore. There you are.
Sergeant Witter. I was
sorry,
just
go ahead.
I was just sent a reminder from somebody here. There's also, I don't know how I forgot this. So one of the participants here is actually Amanda's social worker. She has been extremely instrumental in not only helping Amanda through all of her tough times, but she has stayed engaged with me. When Amanda was in the hospital right before she passed, we had a couple books that she brought to us, and they were explaining cancer diagnosis and like losing your hair and chemo and stuff to small children. They were the only copies that particular hospital had, and we could only keep them for a couple hours. We had to give them back because they needed them for other people. So Amanda, all 4'11" 3/4 of her, decided that was not good enough. So we took a large part of our GoFundMe funds that were supposed to be for traveling and bills and giving things to Maddie. And then it continued after her passing. We bought those 3 books and we give them to Megan, our social worker, and she has sent them nationwide, as far out to as Washington State, I think, is the furthest one she sent. And at this present time, we've sent 226 of those books out. And we've been with, we've coordinated with publishers and editors to get them at a discounted price so we can buy more and provide more. And just this past week, we found out that one of the authors and editors and illustrators are going to switch from the theme of their mom has cancer to their dad has cancer. So we've Amanda has literally been the change to provide a whole different type of book, or change the audience basically, just from saying no, this isn't right, that we can't keep these books for but a couple hours. And we still do that, and my daughter's very active in that as well. So that kind of we print labels and we put them in, and that helps too, knowing that her legacy with the books lives on. So
No, that is really amazing. And I think that a lot of things for us kind of grow out of a place of need, and we don't know what we don't know. And as soon as Sergeant Lawrence had spoiled and said, bring your tissues. I'm a natural crier, but I'm going to try and stay strong, but they're standby. But I can only imagine, right? Like you're going through this thing and we're like, hey, here are these great resources. You have a couple hours, right? And in a perfect world, just like you and your daughter are working to give back with your social worker assistance to bring attention to that and make it easier for other families. So if you want to, I don't know if there's information, or if you want to shoot me that, I can include that in something, we make a post about it at least to spread. I don't know what it looks like, but I know that within, at least at Andrews, at one other family that has their own initiative, also within security forces. I'm sure you're familiar with their family. But I personally love seeing things like that be successful because of how much good it does, for everybody involved. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'll shoot you the link. We have a website set up where you can actually purchase the books and send them to me.
Okay.
And then when it goes on YouTube, I guess you can just put it in the comments.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else at this time? So Sergeant Whitley, the floor is yours.
Alrighty. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Tech Sergeant Whitley, retired Air Force, Security Forces. Did 15 years, 2 months, 10 days. I retired out of the Pentagon, where I was the personal security officer to the Secretary of the Air Force. So I did that for about 2 years, and then before that, I was a Raven at Andrews, and before that, I was a cop and all that crazy stuff. Stationed overseas and all that. So kind of what brings me here today with Sergeant Witter, kind of tell my story on resiliency and things of that nature. So back in October 2018. Wow, it has been that long. Yeah, October 2018. I was struggling with depression and things of that nature for about 2 or 3 months, and that was pretty much throughout the summer. So by the time I got to October, it had already kind of set in, and it was pretty severe. Well, I got to had kind of a traumatic situation going on at home with my current situation, or that current situation, and pretty much October 9th, I decided to turn my service weapon on myself, and I shot myself in the abdomen with hopes to end my life. Of course, that didn't happen. I missed all vital organs besides my colon, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with hollow points, but the gun did have hollow points in them, but they didn't do what hollow points are supposed to do, which is supposed to mushroom out, cause mass damage and maim and destruction. But it didn't do that. It went straight through out of my back. So from there, I was in a recovery for about a week after surgery. I couldn't eat for about 2 weeks. And then from there, I went to Walter Reed. Well, I was heloed to Prince George County Hospital, which is a horrible hospital, but they get a lot of practice with gunshot wounds because they're right outside of DC. So that was good. They probably did that surgery with their eyes closed. And then from there, I went to Walter Reed, stayed there for a few days, and then they moved me over to inpatient. So I was in inpatient therapy for about a week. Did not want to be there. It was the worst thing ever, but it is what it is. So pretty much, but even at that time, which is, when I tell people the story, it's kind of weird. Even at that time, I knew what was true. I knew, what my mindset was, what happened, why I did it, things of that nature. But I still told everybody it was an accident. Even in the hospital, even the paramedics, the guy on the helicopter, the nurses, everybody. I told everybody. Yeah, even the secretary, when I spoke with her the first time, she came to visit me in PG County Hospital, Secretary Wilson, and I told her, the same thing. So then after that, after I got back home from inpatient, I was still kind of in recovery, still, nursing the wounds and stuff like that. But the depression, of course, didn't go away. I didn't just shoot it out of my stomach. So it was still there. So, it got worse, actually. I wasn't sleeping. I had plenty of food in the house. My mom came to stay with me, but I wasn't eating. I didn't sleep in my bed. I slept on the couch, stayed up and watched TV most of the night. So I would sleep maybe like an hour a night, 2 hours maybe. Spent most of my time laying on the couch crying because I wanted to go to sleep, but I didn't want to wake up. So it was like, and every time I did wake up, I was upset or sad because, I failed at it again. So it was a whole slippery slope, up and down with the depression. And of course, having the memories and the flashbacks of what happened. So during that time, I was starting to go back to work. Of course, I didn't have my job at the as a security detail, but they were still there, right there with me, checking in on me. I was still at the Pentagon. I actually went and tried to help out with Air Force protocol for a few months, and they were awesome too. I told them, what was going on. I was pretty transparent because I didn't want to feel like I was like carrying some huge burden or whatever. So I was just like literally telling everybody. So, you know, did that. But like I said, you know, depression just wasn't really, it just wasn't really letting me function, you know, like how I wanted to. Um, I didn't like being in uniform. I didn't like, I didn't like much of anything that had to do with, you know, the old life, quote unquote, that I had, because I felt like I had lost it and I wouldn't be able to go back, you know, to doing that type of work. As you know, on a security detail, I worked hard to get there. So I was just kind of like in limbo as far as like where I could, where I felt comfortable. I had, you know, awesome leadership. You know, from, like I said, from the secretary down to my frontline supervisor. Um, and then even as I moved around, you know, from the protocol, and then I ended up going to the NPF over there on the fifth floor. Um, you know, leadership there, first sergeant, team of first sergeants, they were all awesome. Commander was great. Um, everybody was just very, you know, take the time you need, you know, do what you have to do, go to your appointments, you know, just if you have a moment when you're feeling a certain way, just, you know, let us know, you know, we can understand, you know, whatever. And I did. I was extremely vocal about good and bad days, mostly bad days, but because good days were like, you know, far between. But you know, I tell this story all the time when I was in the hallway at the Pentagon, right outside the secretary's office, and one of her lieutenant colonel like advisors had asked me, "Hey, you know, how's it going?" And I was like, "It's shitty." And he just looked at me. He was like, "Oh, okay, good." But he kind of caught himself because he realized that he was just kind of like generating a canned response. So he was like, "Oh, well, wait, like, what happened again?" And you know, I told him, and I was like, "Hey, you know, I'm doing horrible, but you know, I don't want to lie to you and you know, give you, you know, false information. Like it's this is what it is." And then you know, he started to, you know, inquire and see what he could do to help and stuff like that. So you know, and that was about 2 months after it happened. And then after a while, it just it got too much. You know, I was going through marital issues or whatever, so um, it was just losing my job, losing, you can say, my sanity, and then you know just everything else kind of happening with on top of the already existing depression. It got too much. So I had a meeting with my first sergeant and my ex-wife or wife at the time, and then it pretty much was brought out there that I was, you know, being suicidal, and then I thought about it again, and I don't know if you know people are familiar with statistics, but most people who you know commit suicide or try to commit suicide and you know fail or whatever, like the percentage for them to try again is like over 80%. It's crazy. So yeah, so at that time they were like, well, you know, my first sergeant was like, well, you know, I'm gonna have to, you know, take you back, and you know, and I was like, all right, well, I want to go to Fort Belvoir because I don't want to go back to Walter Reed because um, I don't want to see those nurses again. It was weird. Um, but I went to Fort Belvoir. They didn't have any space, so I ended up going back to Walter Reed anyway. Um, but honestly, me going back that time, I was there for almost 3 weeks, but it was probably the best thing that ever, you know, that could have happened for me. I was more engaged with therapy. And being that I started to tell the truth and put it out there, like, no, it wasn't an accident. You know, I wanted to end my life. Like, this is what it really was. They were able to, you know, kind of maneuver the therapy and have these things, you know, in place to better suit um, my like recovery or whatever. So even though, I would make jokes with the nurses and the staff, like, hey, I'm back and just checking on you guys and, you know, whatever, you know, like everybody knew, that, you know, I was probably going to be on a better track to get better. So, um, So yeah, I went there for 3 weeks and came out. And maybe a few months later, during that time, I kind of decided that I wanted to move on past the military, just because of I didn't think I was strong enough mentally to kind of go back into the race of because I was like about to test for master and stuff like that, and like it was just like I just felt like I would have, I don't know, I just felt like at that moment I didn't have what it took to kind of like keep going at that rate that I had already kind of established for myself previous years. So I med boarded out. They retired me February 2020. So it was a long process, but I have, it sucks that I retired and now, everything's shut down. So I haven't found a job yet, but that's been another test of resiliency, trying to keep my sanity. But I've kind of been, you know, I've been very open and vocal with my, this story, and I've done talks on at Andrews and Pentagon and Bolling, Honor Guard Tech School, all these places, and it does help. It takes a lot out of me, but does it does help, just because to what I've learned through my depression and PTSD and things of that nature. It's kind of like a skewed view of reality. So we kind of walk around with this type of feeling as if we isolate and go about it in that way. But when I started to learn that so many people understood, so many people went through similar things, or they might even at the moment feel that way. It kind of like includes you back in the world again, when you're already feeling like you're on an island. I used to go to like crowded places, and I would just find the nearest corner to back myself into, and just kind of like I would go all in my head about everything. I still do it. I did it at Busch Gardens. I took my daughter to Busch Gardens, and I couldn't stay past 3 hours. I had to leave, and she understood, thankfully, but it was pretty it was different. So, but just being able to talk and connect with people, I'm very open with it on my Facebook and stuff, and I've had people reach out to me, telling me they're struggling, or if I ever need to vent, come to talk with them and stuff, and that's been great. So yeah, that's been my biggest thing as far as with my personal resiliency, and what kind of helped me get through this is accepting everything that's happened, myself, um, and also just being honest. I live very, very open and truthfully. Sometimes it comes off as inappropriate because I have bad humor. But I spent a lot of time in tears and not wanting to live. So if humor or a meme or a joke is giving me life again, then I'm gonna lean towards that, versus the other thoughts that I've had. So I would say, and then also meditation. That's been my biggest. I'm outside right now, like sitting down, like I'm meditating. So that's my biggest. That's my biggest support for me. Since I've started my daily practice again, this is the first time in almost 2 years that I haven't had thoughts of suicide. Like, and that's like, to be completely honest, after that situation, there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think about it. I didn't want to try it again. I didn't want to do it, or I didn't think about the incident itself. Like that's what comes with the territory. And I know I probably told people on this chat, like, nah, no thoughts. I've told my psychiatrist, whatever, no thoughts. But you can't. I can't help it. It's just, I couldn't help it. So yeah, it's one of those things, especially with it being such an aggressive way that I did. You know, it kind of took away that innocence of, you know, mortality, life and death, you know. So, but, you know, thankfully, it's been a good few months and I haven't really had those type of thoughts or whatever. So right now I'm just kind of waiting around and hopefully find a job soon so I can, because now I feel like I can go back into a workplace and really, you know, excel and, you know, have that purpose again, you know, but I knew that I couldn't do it at that time in the military. Like it was just causing more harm than good. So, you know, it was kind of, I try not to have regrets. Sometimes I do, but, you know, I made the best decision with what I had going on. And, you know, and I had the right leadership to, you know, help me along that way. So, yeah, that is it. That's my story.
Well, Sergeant Willie, I want to personally thank you for being willing to share your story. I mean, I did hear you speak several times at Andrews, and as a human, immediately I was just like, man, that has to be exhausting, right? Like to unpack all that, and your dedication to be so transparent and share what you went through in the process, and the really just understand yourself better, you know, coming to the terms of, like you said, you have to implement, like meditation's your go-to now, right? And the ways that you are able to reflect and having to take that tactical pause, but really sometimes for all of us that moment when you made that decision, it could have gone left, right? But it didn't. So it definitely, you're supposed to be here, and I appreciate, you know, your service while you were active duty, and definitely wish you the best. And I think that taking the time to come back, the best airmen, they can't leave. You know, Chief Gaylord, he's still talking to us every Wednesday, and I'm tuning in. So we all have something to give. And what's different about us than civilians is that we are a brotherhood and sisterhood, you know, in what we do. And what we experience and things that you described, maybe not everything, but a lot of us can relate to those things. And one of the things as leaders and airmen that was more historic than present day, but we were trying to push those things down. You know, we're running at 100 miles per hour, trying to do all these things and looking to the other side with another issue. So I really appreciate you sharing. The birds are trying to take your thunder at the end. So I was, I was really leaned in trying to catch every word that you were sharing. So, and meanwhile, I have a sweatshirt on because we like to keep it very cool in this house. But definitely at this time, if there are any questions, this is an opportunity to kind of have that discussion. And it was interesting too, because Sergeant Willie, one of the things you mentioned was just how, and still with Gooster, you're like, I did not want to be inpatient, right? You're like, I did not want to be there, very resistant. And so it took you a little bit, right? Because everything's a journey. And for me, when I hear that, I just feel like anything else, you just weren't ready, right? Like it's tough to identify sometimes with what we need or different things. And no matter externally what's coming at us, if we're not ready internally, it's just not going to be helpful. So I really appreciate your transparency about that, because it's important for people to understand that there's not a magic pill. There's not a magic practice, and what may work for you or me or anyone else that's listening isn't going to work for everyone, right? So having those talks and realizing that it takes work to find whatever our well is, and whatever our well isn't everyone else's well. So definitely appreciate you, and the floor is open for questions and thoughts.
I'll jump in first. Good afternoon, everyone, and to our guest speakers today. Thank you so much for sharing your story with everyone. Um, you've walked you've both walked incredible paths that it's difficult for a lot of us to relate to, but in our profession, we can certainly take lessons from what you've experienced. And I think it's easy to say, speaking for everyone, we're very appreciative. To try and at least spin this on a somewhat lighter direction, but not to take away from what you had. As part of your individual recoveries, did you find anything that there was kind of surprising that you found comfort in, whether it was a new hobby, a food, music that you at one point swore off, just something that at least caught you by surprise that you found a little bit of salvation in? Thanks.
Yeah, I think for me was writing. I'm naturally I like to write. Normally like to-do lists and stuff like that. But then I used to write poetry when I was in high school up until my late 20s. So going back to writing for me was like extremely refreshing. I wrote about everything, good and bad. I actually kind of adopted it was kind of like, so with, like I said, this is me personally, with suicide, it's very something, it's something, it's taboo, you hear it and it's cringeworthy. Everybody's like, oh, but I try to kind of create a relationship with it so that I wouldn't be so that I don't know. I try to make it like a common thing for me, just so that I wouldn't look at it as like the only way out. Um, it was little, like I said, it was more poetic based, but with writing, I think that was like the biggest thing was, writing my thoughts, writing my feelings, writing how I used to be, writing, goals, going back, trying to be goal oriented. Because when you're depressed and you have these type of situations, it is very hard, very, very hard to see past the next hour or the next, if you just don't really look forward to much. So forcing myself to kind of, create goals, create tasks, do something, set something up, say I'm gonna do this today or whatever. Um, that kind of helped a lot. So I would say, yeah, definitely writing. Um, and then I got a motorcycle again. I hadn't ridden in a few years, so I love riding. So that was another great hobby, was getting back on my motorcycle, because that's like super liberating, and it reminded me of the person that I was before all this depression stuff happened. So that was also another big hobby as well. And I just had to, and I had the bad hobbies. When I going through the worst, I drank like a sailor. Like I went, like it was bad, but yeah, it is what it is. I've definitely gotten better with that. I don't drink as much at all now, but that was just kind of one of those journeys. My mom, she was like, no, you shouldn't do that. And, I had the support to kind of guide me away from that. But yeah, and then I just think with riding and riding a motorcycle was another big help. So
Yeah, I think mine was the thing that I was scared of most, that I talked about earlier, was like figuring out how to be the single dad. And like, I talked about just being a driver. I didn't make, decisions. I didn't sign her up for school. I didn't buy her clothes or anything like that. But that kind of surprised me that once I had to start doing that, it was like, okay, well, it's not that bad. I buy clothes for myself. I figure out if I want to go to a movie or do something like that. So, that was kind of the thing that shocked me. Was, like I said, I was scared to death of it. But it was like, okay, well, cool. I can talk to my daughter and we can come up with a plan. If she wants to do something, we'll do it. And if not, then they'll move away from it. And that was my big shocker, was actually settling into being the sole decision maker.
Thank you for your question, and thank you both for responding to, and sharing that stuff with us. We are coming to just about an hour, and I see some people dropping in and some people dropping out. So I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share or ask a question before I give the opportunity for closing thoughts. And that is now.
Hey, this is Sergeant Jordan over here, 11th AMDS, 11th Dental Squadron, First Sergeant. It's I got a question for Sergeant. Is it Whitley? Okay. Hey, I was curious. You know, the more rank you get, the more people you start to supervise. I'm always nervous and scared of that scenario where I just haven't done enough, or I've missed a step. And I've talked to a few people that said, man, if I can go back and if I addressed this situation this way, I would have, and maybe that would have been the thing to make things different. Looking back at your scenario, do you see times where maybe you were sending out the message that suicide was on your mind, and it was addressed wrong, or not addressed at all?
Right. Yeah, so there was, it was one time where I did kind of like, put the message out there that something was wrong, like something was off. Being where I worked at with the secretary and being on a security detail, it's a 6-man team. So, and we were constantly busy, but, I loved it. That was the best job I've ever had. So, and my job was actually my escape, so sometimes people kind of have this, um, this vision that, maybe the job is what's, stressing people out to get to the point where, they can't do this anymore and stuff like that. Well, it was kind of the opposite for me. My job was my escape. So it was very easy for me to kind of mask, what was going on, with me personally. But there was one time at AFA in 2018, September, so right before it actually, where I did kind of have a moment where I said, like one of my coworkers said, hey, how you doing? You all right? Because I was sitting off to the side during lunch, and I told him, I was like, no, I'm not. And he didn't really like engage any further. And I don't fault him for that. Even in that moment, I wasn't like, hey man, I'm trying to tell you something. It was just like, I was just like, all right, So, one less person I gotta talk to, so that's good. But then after that, yeah, it was all kind of just, internally within myself. And, I was a flight sergeant, where I've had, 40 to 50 airmen under me before I started with the secretary. And I actually have talked to people who kind of been at their brink, and, and like one guy, for example, he was showing up to work late, like, like 2 days straight. He showed up to work late. And, sometimes in a cop where, the first thing you want to do is kind of like, hey man, what the hell, what's going on? Like, what are you doing? Like, but I don't know, something told me, I just, I talked to him when he was on the phone, and he was he was apologetic. And I was like, hey man, hey, just get dressed, just take your time, get here, don't stress about it, because I don't want you to get in an accident driving, just kind of relax, chill out, get here when you can. So he got here, and, I talked to him, and, he started to tell me he was going through some things at home. He was kind of taking on the burden of, everything that his family was going through. And so, he was just kind of like, he was just stressed out and wasn't sleeping and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. I was like, hey, I appreciate you telling me, like, I totally understand, if you need to take some time, to kind of sort things out. And we just had a long conversation about, how to manage these type of expectations that he was having for himself and his family and stuff like that. And then it was just a matter of like, you know, um, just I kept checking in on him, making sure he was okay, making sure, I wasn't posting him anywhere that it would kind of like, add to the extra stress. Like he was like training to be one of the desk sergeant assistants or whatever, running the alarm monitor stuff. So I took him away from that because I just didn't want him to, have to worry about that. I extended his QC out, 30 days, and then that way, they just didn't have to. He didn't have to like worry about that part. I really wanted him to get, get himself together. So. Yeah, it is very, but like I said, I think my personal opinion, and I know a lot of people, we all want to help, we want to get, we want to help people, um, but we just have to, one is establish a way of understanding without necessarily trying to fix, right? So we all have had issues in our lives, we all have had, things that have happened in our lives that we might not tell anybody, but sometimes being relatable and having a situation where you can kind of you might have to tell a junior airman, hey, yeah, this happened to me too, like that. It changes everything for people. It changed everything for me. Secretary Wilson told me she was depressed when she was in college. It changed everything for me. Here's the most I thought she was like the smartest person in the any military branch, and she's telling me that she's had issues with depression and stuff. So being relatable, these things like it helps, and just tapping into that, and not always wanting to be the best of the best, so that people can follow. Just kind of I don't know, just kind of blend in with everybody, and people will start to kind of gravitate towards you. I think since I've been super vulnerable with everything that I've gone through, like people could literally gravitate towards me. It's like they will spill their guts within an hour of me talking to them, and I'm completely fine with it. I love it, and we'll talk about it, cry or whatever. We'll laugh and joke or whatever it is, but there's an energy that people will pick up on, and when people are hurting, it's not that they just want to leave. They're just looking for somewhere to kind of, release that burden, that energy that they're carrying, in a place where they feel like they can't do it anymore. Like when they can't, release that stress or that depression. It's actually it's almost like the opposite of the isolation. It's like you really want to be felt, understood, and heard versus left alone, and but it has to be legitimate. It can't be like cookie cutter as far as according to my checklist. I think we have to talk about this, and I have to tell you this, and then we got to go to the chaplain, and I got to do this. And, it's like it has to be like a little bit more personal, and I think that's where the change will kind of start to happen.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, it's Wes. So I just got a quick question for you guys. If you could sit down with someone that was going through your situation, what would you tell them? What would you want them to know? I know you guys personally, and I've talked to you guys, but what would you want somebody to know? What would you want somebody to know?
Don't change who you are based on the feelings of others. Like Whitley was just saying, like it's not always a checklist. What he would do is not what I would do, and vice versa. So Willie's talking about, dark humor. We're cops. There's always dark humor. Like that's how we survive, I feel. So, it's okay to talk about things. It's okay to joke about serious situations, keeping in mind they're super serious and they're horrendous situations to go through. But if you allow yourself to become numb to everything, then you're further off the track to recovery and getting back, or finding a new path. I mean, if you want to completely reinvent yourself, that's great. But when you're going through tough times, you do. I mean, like deployments, you fall back on your training. It's the same thing with your personality. You have to be you. And as leaders, we, like what Whitley was just saying, there's no cookie cutter. You have to be relatable, and not rigid where you have to just check the boxes.
Sorry, Willie, are you going to jump in?
Oh yeah. Yep, my bad. Yeah, so yeah, I think what I would tell somebody and who gone through something that I'm going through or that I have gone through is I think the biggest help for me, not just with meditation helps, yeah, but kind of putting in the like asking questions to myself. So it's kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy, like that helped me a lot when I was inpatient, and I still kind of use it to this day. We have a feeling, we have thoughts, right, and then we have those thoughts that generate a feeling, and then sometimes with depression or anxieties or whatever the case may be, stress even, we'll take that feeling and we'll just completely ride that wave and just you know just you start to kind of find different ways to support that feeling. But with the feeling, it's not all the way true, as opposed to your thoughts. So what I started to do was, I'll even like last night, I had I had a thought in my head. I was kind of like, I got sad because of like not being able to find a job, right, and not getting any type of callbacks and not like that. So I knew that I was, that bothered me, and I called it out like, all right, yeah, this is bothering me. So then I was, starting to get those feelings like, oh, I should have stayed in. I should have just, I should have did this. Maybe I'm just not, good enough compared to everybody else. And then like it was like I had to like, whoa, like, all right, now you're going down another, path or whatever. And so it was just like, then I just started asking the questions to myself, like, well, why else could it be? Why do you think you're not good enough? Or why are you good enough? And I was like, well, yeah, I am. I'm very well qualified, and I know the COVID thing is kind of stopping everything. And then it's just like, well, it just gives you more time to keep meditating, or so it kind of put a gap between me having those thoughts and then turning them into horrible feelings that would just kind of just go and go a whole nother route or whatever. So I would always ask those why. Somebody came up to me right now and told me they were feeling a certain way, they might unload all kinds of things, and then you just all right, well, you said you feel this way, like, well, why is that? And then they probably say, oh, I don't know, I just do. Like, no, we got to talk about it. We got to really figure out, well, why is that? Because you might have a false sense of your actual reality of the situation. So it might not be as bad, or it might not be as it might not last as long, or it might just be a phase, or it might just be this, or it could just be completely false. And just kind of giving somebody that way of thinking, or out thinking their their current situation. And and yeah, I think that that's kind of what I would do, what I would have done sooner, and what I would do now. You know, talking to anybody, especially at this point.
Thank you both. Last call for questions before closing remarks. So I just want to tell you both again, thank you so very much for taking the time and coming and being transparent. One of the things I think of when I think about resiliency stories is just that what tests our resiliency is different for everyone. And it's interesting how the first test of our coping skills, we're like, man, we can't overcome this mountain. Like, this is the worst thing we've ever experienced. But the reality is there's not just one thing. There's not one event that people face in their lifetimes, and it's different for everyone. So being mindful of that. And what I heard Sergeant Whitley, and I heard you echo it, Sergeant Wilkins, is just that you have to be genuine, right? So actions speak louder than words. If I say, how are you doing? And I keep walking, did I really care how you were doing? And likewise, I think, Sergeant Whitley, you mentioned where when you actually told someone, they went to do their robotic, thing that they normally do. And they're like, oh crap, what'd you say? So really taking that pause. And then I think that we do go back to our training. So sometimes when situations happen, we go to that decision tree. Like, oh crap, let's go to the chaplain, let's call mental health, let's do those things. And those are all great resources, but sometimes most of us can share that what we needed is someone just to talk to in that moment, in that instant, to be a human with. And again, if you are the person that uses resources, that's not a bad thing, but be transparent. Like, hey, I'm just really not comfortable with, communicate with the person. So it doesn't become like a hostage situation, a situation that the intentions were great, but now we're in this place and there wasn't that other substance. Because our situations can kind of snowball sometimes really quickly out of control. But we're kind of coming on the end here, but I wanted to just mention resources. Thanks so much for mentioning BHOP. The BHOP First Stop is a mental health initiative that you can go right from your PCM, and it's just going to work on small things. And that's the first intention, first stop of mental health. There's mental health both in, multiple places in the National Capital Region. And personally, I'll just share that Military One Source has been huge for me. Military One Source, when I came home from Korea, wasn't doing so hot. I had lived by myself for a year and I came home, and my schedule was still really, super jam-packed. And I've used Military One Source now on 3 different occasions to just do those telephone appointments, just like we're making the time for a Zoom now. When I was at work, I'd close my door and I'd say, phone meeting, or I'd schedule them during my commutes. And now during COVID, we're trying to, utilize them again for other things. So it's a great resource. It's free. And for a lot of people, it may feel more safe than other resources. And if you're online now and you're wondering, or if you need help finding them, please reach out to me and I will, make sure that you get the information that you need. But Sergeant Wilkins, if you want to say anything in closing, and then Sergeant Whitley, and then we'll wrap it up. And really quickly, so this will be available on the NCR YouTube, CAA YouTube channel later this afternoon. Thanks so much.
No, just thanks for having us. Thanks, Sergeant Whitley, for sharing yours as well. I think in both of our situations, it's always key. Like we've been hearing it for the last couple of years. Raise your hand, take a knee. I think that was one of the biggest things for me, was just realizing that, hey, I've got all this stuff coming up, but I can only do one thing at a time. So I don't only worry about, okay, if I got something coming up next week, let's just deal with it, with what's coming at me today. And being, like Whitley said, genuine with people. That's what helped me. They were like, okay, cool, come sit in my office, calm down for a minute. some of the best leadership that you can do is not going to that, what he said, that robotic response. So thanks again for having me. Thanks for everybody who asked questions and who watched.
Yeah, definitely thank you for having me here. It's pretty awesome. I was kind of nervous about the whole Zoom thing. Sergeant Wilkins, amazing story. So glad that, you know, you continue to keep, you know, chipping away at it and taking a day at a time. I know it's going to be tough, and, you know, you can always reach out to me as well. You know, I got like 1,000 memes that I can unload and, you know, definitely brighten up anybody's day at this point. But yeah, I think, you know, final takeaway, I would say, get to know yourself. Get to know yourself to protect yourself from yourself. You know, we can't try to change the world around us, or even try to change other people's worlds, or, you know, if we don't know how ours operates. You know, so I think during this journey for me, how I've, you know, kind of gotten to just going within in a constructive way, not like in a hermit crab depressive way, but just going in and just kind of like understanding me as myself outside of the military, outside of whatever things that I accumulate or anything like that, but just really understanding how I operate, and it's kind of helped me be a little bit more open to how others operate and how others, you know, might need help and stuff like that. So, which also leads to my next final point is compassion. Having that ability to put yourself in somebody's shoes first before you try to tell them your shoes are ugly. And run off the road by the person on the other side of them. Like, you just never know. Just, you know, put yourself in other people's shoes, and, you know, that'll definitely help. I think we need that the most in today's world anyway. But yeah, thank you again for having me. It's been pretty cool, and look forward to seeing you guys around.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good day. And if anyone needs anything, please reach out. This will be available on the NCR CAA YouTube channel later this afternoon. Thank you.